At exactly 2:34 p.m., Congressman Thomas Massie asked the question that would break the internet within 8 minutes. FBI Director Kash Patel's face froze. Cameras captured everything. What happened in those 47 seconds of silence would become the most analyzed moment in congressional oversight history. The Rayburn House Office Building's hearing room buzzed with the usual Washington theater. C-SPAN cameras rolled. Reporters scrolled through phones. FBI Director Kash Patel sat confidently behind the witness table, his dark suit pressed perfectly, his American flag pin catching the harsh committee lights. He'd navigated dozens of these hearings before, deflecting questions with practiced ease, turning controversies into talking points about FBI efficiency and national security wins. But Thomas Massie wasn't like other congressmen. The Kentucky Republican had built his reputation on preparation, precision, and an engineer's mind for exposing contradictions. While other members grandstanded for cable news clips, Massie studied documents. While others asked softball questions, Massie constructed intellectual traps that witnesses didn't see until they'd already walked into them. And today, Massie had something nobody knew about. A whistleblower document. 23 pages detailing FBI handling of Epstein-related materials. Names, dates, deleted files, and suppressed evidence. The document had arrived at Massie's office through encrypted channels 3 weeks earlier, and his staff had spent every day since verifying its authenticity. The hearing had covered standard oversight topics for 90 minutes. Budget allocations, counterterrorism operations, cybersecurity initiatives. Patel had been smooth, confident, even charming when discussing FBI accomplishments under his leadership. He'd survived the tough questions about personnel changes and political loyalty with his usual deflections about transparency and results, but Massie had been waiting, watching, letting Patel get comfortable, letting his guard drop. Director Patel, Massie began, his Kentucky accent cutting through the room's ambient noise with unexpected sharpness. I want to shift topics to the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. The temperature in the room changed instantly. Reporters stopped scrolling. Other committee members looked up from their notes. Even the stenographer's fingers paused momentarily before resuming their mechanical rhythm. Patel's confident expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. A micro-calculation. How dangerous was this question going to be? Congressman, the FBI conducted exhaustive investigations into all matters related to Jeffrey Epstein, Patel replied smoothly, falling back on his standard response. We've been more transparent than any previous administration about those investigations. Massie didn't react. He simply opened a manila folder with deliberate precision, the soft rustle of papers somehow ominous in the suddenly attentive chamber. Director, I have documents indicating that in March of this year, Attorney General Bondi directed the FBI to review approximately 100,000 Epstein-related records. Is that accurate? 100,000. The number hung in the air like a detonation. Gasps rippled through the press gallery. Other committee members exchanged quick glances. This wasn't public information. How did Massie have this? Patel's knuckles whitened slightly as he gripped the witness table. Congressman, I'm not going to discuss internal investigative processes or specific document reviews. That's not what I asked, Massie pressed, his engineer's precision cutting through the deflection. I asked if Attorney General Bondi directed a review of approximately 100,000 Epstein records. Yes or no? The room fell completely silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause. Patel's media training kicked in, but everyone watching could see the internal struggle playing out behind his carefully controlled expression. The Department of Justice and FBI have conducted comprehensive reviews of all Epstein-related materials. Patel finally responded, the non-answer confirming everything. Massie leaned forward slightly. So that's a yes. 100,000 documents. Director Patel, how many of those documents have been released to the public? Another trap. Patel knew it but couldn't see the exit. Congressman, many of those documents contain sensitive law enforcement information, ongoing investigative details, and privacy concerns that prevent wholesale public release. How many? Massie repeated, his voice hardening. Give me a number. Out of 100,000 documents, how many has the FBI released to the American people who demand to know the truth about Jeffrey Epstein's connections to powerful individuals? Patel shifted in his chair. The confident FBI director who'd entered the hearing room now looked like a witness who'd walked into an ambush he hadn't prepared for. I don't have an exact number at my disposal, Congressman. 0, Massie stated flatly. pulling another document from his folder. The answer is 0. Not one single document from that 100,000 document review has been released to the public. In fact, according to this whistleblower report I'm holding, the FBI specifically directed staff to identify and suppress any documents that might be politically sensitive. The room erupted. Republican committee members demanded to see Massie's documents. Democrats started talking simultaneously about transparency and accountability. Press gallery photographers' camera shutters clicked like machine gun fire, capturing the exact moment an FBI director's carefully constructed narrative began crumbling. The committee chairman gavelled for order, but the chaos took nearly 30 seconds to settle. When the room finally quieted, every camera was focused on Patel's face, waiting for his response. And Patel said nothing. 1 second passed, then 5, then 10. The silence stretched like a tightrope pulled to its breaking point. Patel stared at Massie, his jaw working slightly, his hands now visibly gripping the table edge. His lawyer instincts were screaming at him to say something, anything, but every possible response led to more dangerous territory. 20 seconds. Reporters were frantically typing. Social media notifications began buzzing on phones throughout the room. The hashtag Patel silence started trending before the silence even ended. 30 seconds. Other committee members shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't normal hearing theater. This was a genuine crisis unfolding in real time. The FBI director had been asked a direct question about suppressing Epstein evidence, and he couldn't answer. 40 seconds. Patel's face had gone from confident tan to a pale, waxy sheen. A thin line of sweat became visible on his forehead, despite the room's controlled temperature. His eyes darted briefly to FBI staff sitting in the back rows, looking for rescue that wasn't coming. 47 seconds total. When Patel finally spoke, his voice had lost all its earlier confidence. Congressman, I reject the characterization that the FBI has suppressed any legitimate information. But the damage was catastrophic and complete. That 47-second silence had confirmed everything Massie had implied. The FBI was hiding Epstein evidence. They'd reviewed 100,000 documents and released none. They'd specifically targeted politically sensitive materials for suppression. Massie wasn't finished. He pulled out another page from his folder. Director Patel, this whistleblower document indicates that on July 7th, the FBI released an unsigned memorandum stating there is no incriminating client list related to Jeffrey Epstein. Who authored that memorandum? Another precision strike. Patel attempted recovery. That memorandum was the result of extensive investigative work by multiple FBI divisions. Who signed it? Massie demanded. Every official FBI document requires signature and accountability. This one had none. Who made the decision to release an unsigned document, absolving powerful individuals of any connection to a sex trafficking operation? Patel's response revealed everything about how institutions protect themselves when cornered. The memorandum bore the official insignia of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That's not a signature, Massie shot back. That's a logo. Who takes responsibility for declaring there's no client list when whistleblowers are telling me the FBI found extensive evidence of powerful individuals' connections to Epstein? Who made that call, Director? The constitutional implications were staggering. An unsigned document from the nation's premier law enforcement agency declaring no evidence existed, while internal whistleblowers said the opposite. This wasn't bureaucratic sloppiness. This was institutional cover-up. Patel attempted deflection through aggression. Congressman, I find it concerning that you're relying on alleged whistleblower documents that may contain classified information. I question the source and legitimacy of your materials. Massie's response was devastating. Director Patel, are you seriously suggesting that asking questions about Jeffrey Epstein evidence is a security risk? The American people aren't asking about nuclear codes or CIA operations. They're asking why the FBI reviewed 100,000 documents about a convicted sex trafficker who allegedly had connections to presidents, princes, and billionaires, and then released nothing. That's not classified information, Director. That's a cover-up. The word hung in the chamber like an accusation that couldn't be taken back. Cover-up. Not mismanagement, not bureaucratic delay. Cover-up. Social media exploded in real time. Within 3 minutes of Massie uttering that word, Epstein cover-up was trending #1 on Twitter. TikTok videos of the exchange were being created and posted. YouTube clips were being uploaded. The 47-second silence was being replayed, analyzed, memed, and dissected by millions of viewers. But Massie saved his most devastating revelation for last. He pulled out a final document with theatrical precision. Director Patel, I have evidence that the FBI conducted searches specifically targeting documents that mention certain political figures, including current and former presidents. Those documents were then classified at higher levels or marked for restricted access. Can you explain why the FBI would specifically hunt for and then hide documents mentioning political leaders in an investigation about sex trafficking? The question was a constitutional atomic bomb. The FBI, supposedly independent, allegedly hunting for and suppressing evidence based on political considerations. If true, it wasn't just a scandal. It was the transformation of law enforcement into a political protection racket. Patel's final response told everyone watching exactly what they needed to know. Congressman, I'm not going to discuss specific investigative methodologies or document classification decisions in an open hearing. Translation: Yes, we did it, but I can't admit it publicly. Within hours of the hearing's conclusion, the fallout was unprecedented. CNN led with FBI director cannot explain Epstein document suppression. Fox News ran FBI Coverup. Massie exposes hidden evidence. Even international media picked up the story. The hashtag release the Epstein files reached over 4 million mentions within 6 hours. Congressional switchboards were overwhelmed with calls demanding transparency. 3 separate congressional committees announced investigations into FBU handling of Epstein evidence. Legal experts called it the most damaging law enforcement hearing since Watergate. Constitutional scholars warned about the weaponization of federal law enforcement for political protection. Even senators from Patel's own party began privately questioning whether he could survive the scandal. Thomas Massie had done what many thought impossible. With careful preparation, precise questions, and 47 seconds of devastating silence, he'd exposed what the FBI had been desperately trying to hide. The American people now knew their law enforcement agencies had reviewed 100,000 documents about Jeffrey Epstein's connections to powerful individuals and had chosen to release exactly none of them. The question now wasn't whether there was a cover-up. Patel's silence had confirmed that. The question was how deep it went, who it protected, and whether American democracy could survive institutions that prioritize power over truth. Massie had shown that sometimes the most powerful weapon against corruption isn't a subpoena or a warrant. It's a simple question that forces the guilty to reveal themselves through their inability to answer.